expenses. The WNBA projects a recent proposal from the Players Association, which would give players about 30% of gross revenue and is believed to feature around a $10.5 million salary cap. This would result in a $700 million loss over the course of the deal. The union believes that projection is absolutely false. The same union that claims they don't have access to the books now believe that that projection is false, when if we take their word for it, they would have no idea whether that projection is true or false.
$700 million. That's not a typo. That's what the WNBA says it would lose if it agreed to the players' latest proposal. To put that in perspective, the league claims this single deal would cost more than the combined losses of the entire WNBA over its first 29 years of existence. And we're 8 days away from the January 9th deadline. With both sides so far apart, they might as well be negotiating from different planets. Here's what's actually on the table. The players want approximately 30% of gross revenue, with a salary cap around $10.5 million. Their December 28th proposal featured an average salary of $1 million and a max contract of $2.5 million. Compare that to 2025 numbers. The current supermax is $250,000. The average salary is $120,000, and the minimum is $66,000.
Salary. That would put the league out of business. Million divided by 2, carry the 3, multiply by 4, subtract the 6. Then you have the 10 times. Oh yeah, it'd put the league out of business. Come on, $1 million for a middle of the road player, an average player in the WNBA, like a Dana Evans making $1 million. You got to be shitting me. Kristen Nye making $1 million. You got to be absolutely kidding me. $1 million salaries, average. Yeah, no wonder why the league said no to that. That's abhorrent. Tammy Bentley would be making $1 million a year, and I love you, Tammy, and I love you, but that.
Let's be clear about what $1 million average salary means. That would put players like Dana Evans, Elizabeth Williams, and Timmy Fagbenlat at 7 figures. These are solid professional athletes, but they're role players. In a league that's been operating at a loss for nearly 3 decades, paying bench contributors $1 million annually isn't ambitious growth planning. It's financial fantasy. The owners came back with their own proposal. On December, they're offering over 50% of net revenue, which sounds generous until you understand that critical word, net. Net means revenue after expenses are subtracted. The players want 30% of gross revenue, meaning before any business costs are deducted. That's the fundamental divide, and it's not getting bridged by polite negotiation.
Expecting that a recent proposal from the Players Association, which would give players about 30% of gross revenue and is believed to feature approximately a $10.5 million salary cap, would result in $700 million in losses over the course of the agreement. Such losses would jeopardize the league's financial health, the source says, and they would be more than the combined losses of the league and its teams in the WNBA's first 29 years of existence. You're telling me they could lose more over the course of this deal than over the past 29 years combined? Oh yeah. Yeah, I'd say.
The league's December proposal would quadruple current salaries. Maximum contracts would jump to $1.3 million in year 1 and grow to nearly $2 million over the life of the deal. Average salaries would rise to over $530,000, climbing to more than $780,000. Minimum salaries would start above $250,000. The salary cap would begin at $5 million and grow with revenue. That's a 4 times multiplier on current compensation, and the Players Association president, Nneka Ogwumike, told ESPN, "It's not adequate." She said it almost feels like negotiations are in their infancy, despite opting out of the current CBA over a year ago. Think about that timeline. They've had 12 months to negotiate, and they're essentially back at square one.
Have access to the books. Remember last year after the 2024 season, Black and White Sports, Rhodes, he pointed this out late last week. They released that information. They released how much the WNBA garnered. This season, we have no idea. Did they make money? Did they lose money? How much did they lose? Was it a steep decline? Was it a sharp decline? We have no idea about that. They're hiding something. whether it's the owners or the players. They're hiding something. The projection, sources said, was determined based on previously audited league financial information. But the union believes its revenue sharing model still puts the league in a profitable position. A separate source close to the negotiation said.
Now, here's where it gets complicated. The two sides can't even agree on what counts as revenue. Expansion fees are the perfect example. Golden State, Toronto, Portland are joining in. Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia just paid $250 million each to enter between 2028. That's $750 million in expansion money alone. The league says expansion fees generate zero net revenue because new teams get a cut of the expansion fee but then dilute future revenue shares for existing teams. It's a wash from their accounting perspective. The players' union sees $750 million entering the league and says that's real money that should count toward their 30%. Both positions have logic, but they're fundamentally incompatible views of how business works.
You get the new investors to pay the old investors. You get the new suckers to pay the old suckers. That's what it is. The league soon will grow to 18 teams. Portland and Toronto will debut in 26, and Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia recently played $250 million each to join the league between 2028 and 2030. The league considers expansion fees a transaction that generates zero net revenue. New teams are out of the expansion fee, but earn a fractional share of future league revenue, while pre-existing teams get a portion of the fee, but lose a fractional share of future league revenue. The old trade-off. The union's proposal, meanwhile, accounts for expansion fees in its projections, seeing them as real money that still contributes to the owner's bottom line. They think they're entitled to the expansion fee money. They're not. Either way, the two sides remain divided.
The Players Association argues that athletes who provide the labor shouldn't be paid last after all business expenses are covered. They want to be compensated based on what the league brings in, not what's left over after owners pay for everything else. From their perspective, they have no control over how much teams spend on facilities, coaching staff, travel, or marketing. Why should their salaries depend on those decisions? The owners counter that you can't pay employees before you know if the business is profitable. They're proposing uncapped revenue sharing, where if revenues exceed projections, including potential renegotiation of the recent media rights deal, players would participate in that upside. But the base compensation has to be tied to actual profitability, not gross receipts.
The league has proposed a system where players would receive in excess of 50% of net revenue, essentially defined as revenue after subtracting expenses, a source told ESPN. The last reported WNBA proposal from December 18th featured an uncapped revenue sharing component, a raise of maximum salaries of $1.3 million, and growing to nearly $2 million over the life of the deal. Average salaries to above $530,000 and growing to more than $780,000 over the life of the deal. And minimum salaries to more than $250,000 in the first year alone. The salary cap would be $5 million in the first year and grow in line with revenue growth in the years afterwards. By comparison, in 2025, the Supermax was $250,000, the average salary was $120,000, and the minimum was $66,000. These leagues are getting 4x.
Here's what I think the owners understand that the players might not. The growth has likely already peaked. We saw ratings decline year over year when you account for how they're now being counted. Nielsen changed its measurement methodology to include out-of-home viewing, which inflated 2024 numbers. If you applied that same counting method to 2023, the actual viewership would show a decrease. The Caitlin Clark effect drove massive attention in 2024, but what happens when she's injured? What happens in a season where the Indiana Fever don't make a playoff run? The league's entire financial model right now is built on the assumption that interest will continue growing exponentially. The media partners who just signed that rights deal are already seeing numbers that don't match their projections. I wouldn't be surprised if that contract gets renegotiated and not in the WNBA's favor.
That the players don't know is that the growth is damn near peaked already. We already saw ratings go down year over year. Numbers-wise, they went up. But when you factor in how they're now counting ratings, they went down. If I go from counting 50% and I have 1 million, and then I go to counting 100% and I have 1 million, and some change, well, the number's going to go up, But if I would have counted 100% in last year's number that gave me 1 million, what would have happened if I actually included the other 50%? Should revenues exceed projections, including if the league and its media partners reevaluate their recently agreed upon rights deal, the WNBA's revenue sharing component allows players to still participate in that upside. As far as the media deal goes, I do see it getting
the players authorized to strike, which doesn't guarantee they'll walk out, but signals they're willing to. January 8th is the day before the deadline. If they're still at 30% of gross revenue versus 50% of net revenue, there's no deal. Those positions are too far apart to bridge in final hour negotiations. And honestly, as long as the players stay locked on 30% of gross, this goes nowhere. I don't care what the salary cap numbers look like or how the max contracts are structured. The revenue sharing model is the foundation, and if that foundation is broken, nothing else matters. The owners aren't going to agree to a formula that their own projections say would lose $700 million over the life of the deal. The union can call that projection absolutely false all they want, but they're simultaneously claiming they don't have access to the books, so how would they know?
Players Association President Nneka Ogwumike told ESPN on December 19th, though, that the league's revenue share model is not adequate. The union is proposing a system based on gross revenue, defined as revenues before subtracting expenses, giving players about 30%. The WNBA Players Association believe that the players who provide labor and have no control over business expenses shouldn't be paid last. You guys don't generate though anything. You don't really generate money. More recently, as talks have continued, the union has proposed a lower salary cap closer to $10.5 million. Multiple sources familiar with the negotiations told ESPN. Both sides have previously agreed to 2 extensions on the current CBA and to continue negotiating a new deal. But Ogwumike told ESPN that even after opting out of the current CBA over a year ago, it almost feels like negotiations are a bit in their infancy. And as we all know, they authorized a strike, which doesn't mean that they will strike, but maybe January 8th, the day before the deadline, they're going to strike. Oh, no. They're not moving off their 30%. And as long as they don't move off their 30%, deal's never going to get done. I don't care what I don't even care what the numbers look like. As long as that revenue sharing stays at 30%, that the players seem like they want it to stay at, it's not going anywhere. Staying right where it is. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I appreciate all the support. 8 more days until we find out what's going on.
Let's talk about what a work stoppage would actually mean. The 2026 season is supposed to start in May. If there's no CBA by January 9th and negotiations drag into spring, you're looking at delayed training camps, shortened schedules, or potentially no season at all. The league just had its most visible year in history. Momentum is everything in sports business, and a strike would kill it. The players have leverage because the league can't operate without them. But the owners have leverage too, because most WNBA players depend on that income. Unlike NBA players who can sit out a season and still be financially comfortable, WNBA athletes don't have that cushion. Many play overseas during the off-season just to supplement their income. A lost season hurts them more than it hurts owners who have other business interests. That asymmetry in financial pressure usually determines how these negotiations end. The side that can afford to wait longer typically wins, and in this case, that's the owners. They've been subsidizing losses for 29 years. They can afford to wait. The question is whether the players can. There's also the issue of public perception. If the WNBA cancels its 2026 season over money after finally building mainstream attention, casual fans won't dig into the details of gross versus net revenue. They'll just see players walking away from the best opportunity the league has ever had. Fair or not, that's how it will be covered. The Players Association believes they're fighting for fair compensation in a league that's finally profitable or close to it. The owners say the league is still losing money, and this proposal would accelerate those losses to an unsustainable level. Someone's numbers are wrong, and without transparent financial disclosure, we can't know who. But here's what we do know. The media rights deal that everyone celebrated isn't guaranteed money. It's projections based on viewership targets. If those targets aren't met, the payments get adjusted. Expansion fees are one-time cash infusions, not recurring revenue. And the Caitlin Clark effect, while real, is dependent on one player staying healthy and relevant. The owners are looking at all of that and seeing they're offering to quadruple salaries and share upside if revenues grow, but they want protection if revenues don't grow. The players are looking at sold-out arenas and record viewership and saying the league is lying about its finances to suppress their compensation. Both sides have dug in. Both sides believe they're being reasonable, and we're 8 days away from finding out who blinks first, or if anyone blinks at all. Because if January 9th comes and goes without a deal, the WNBA's biggest crisis won't be about money. It will be about whether the league can survive killing its own momentum. So here's the question. If you're a player in this negotiation, do you take the 4 times salary increase and bet on revenue growth bonuses, or do you hold out for 30% of gross and risk losing a season? Because that's the actual choice on the table. And whatever they decide in the next 8 days will determine whether the WNBA builds on 2024's success or whether we look back at this moment as the peak before everything fell apart. Let me know what you think happens next. Are the players right to hold firm, or are they overplaying their hand? Drop your take in the comments, and if you want to see how this plays out, make sure you're subscribed, because January 9th is going to be a defining moment for this league, one way or another.